What if I told you that a single, simple, daily activity, something you can do without expensive equipment, without a gym membership, and without medication, has been shown to significantly lower high blood pressure, improve arterial health, and even reduce your risk of heart attack? And that this activity becomes even more powerful after age 60, precisely when cardiovascular risk begins to climb. That activity is walking, but not just any kind of walking. Now, before you dismiss this as too simplistic, let's go a little deeper into the science. High blood pressure, or hypertension, is often called the silent killer. It quietly damages arteries, stresses the heart, and increases the risk of stroke, kidney disease, and cognitive decline. According to the World Health Organization, over 1.28 billion adults globally suffer from hypertension, with the prevalence dramatically increasing after age 60. But what's fascinating and deeply empowering is how profoundly the cardiovascular system responds to certain behavioral interventions even later in life. The human circulatory system is not static. It's highly adaptive, constantly responding to the demands we place on it. When we engage in specific forms of movement, we trigger a cascade of molecular and neurological responses that improve vascular flexibility, enhance nitric oxide production, reduce systemic inflammation, and optimize autonomic nervous system balance, all of which directly reduce blood pressure and heart attack risk. For decades, the dominant paradigm in cardiovascular prevention was pharmacological. Drugs like ACE inhibitors, beta blockers, and statins. These remain valuable tools, but emerging research from fields like behavioral cardiology and exercise physiology shows that lifestyle interventions can work synergistically with, or even sometimes outperform, medications in key markers of cardiovascular risk. A 2021 meta-analysis published in the British Journal of Sports Medicine found that certain forms of exercise, notably brisk walking, interval walking, and controlled breathing walks, can lower systolic blood pressure by an average of 8 to 10 Mach at that. For context, that's equivalent to or even better than some first-line medications. Another study from the Journal of the American College of Cardiology demonstrated that walking as little as 7,000 steps per day was associated with a 50 to 70% reduction in mortality risk in adults over 60. But here's where it gets even more interesting from a neuroscience perspective. The brain and cardiovascular system are deeply intertwined. Your daily walking practice doesn't just lower blood pressure, it actively regulates your autonomic nervous system, reducing chronic sympathetic activation, your fight or flight response, and enhancing parasympathetic tone, your rest and digest state. In short, walking is cardiovascular medicine that rewires your nervous system. Today, we're going to explore exactly how this works. I'll walk you through 6 core science-backed insights, from endothelial function to neurovascular coupling, and give you practical, actionable tools you can implement immediately. By the end of this talk, you'll not only understand why this simple habit is so powerful, but how to optimize it for maximum benefit even after age 60. Let's begin. When we talk about high blood pressure, most people immediately think of numbers, 130 over 80, 140 over 90. But beneath those numbers lies something far more dynamic, your endothelium. This thin one-cell layer lining the inside of your blood vessels isn't passive. It's alive, responsive, and constantly adapting to the demands you place on your body. The endothelium produces a molecule called nitric oxide, NO, which is one of the body's most powerful vasodilators. When nitric oxide is released, your blood vessels relax, widen, and allow blood to flow more freely. This lowers systemic blood pressure and reduces the workload on your heart. The Nobel Prize in Physiology or Medicine in 1998 was awarded in part for the discovery of nitric oxide's role in vascular regulation. That's how central this molecule is to cardiovascular health. Here's where walking enters the picture. When you walk, especially at a brisk pace, you create rhythmic muscle contractions in your legs. These contractions act like a pump, helping to return venous blood back to your heart, what's known as the muscle pump effect. This increased blood flow generates what scientists call shear stress on the walls of your arteries. In response to this shear stress, the endothelial cells release more nitric oxide, improving vascular flexibility and lowering blood pressure. A 2015 study published in Hypertension demonstrated that just 30 minutes of brisk walking per day for older adults resulted in a significant increase in endothelial function measured by flow manodyl. What's especially empowering is that these effects occur almost immediately after starting a consistent walking routine, often within a few weeks. Now, let's consider something even more remarkable. Endothelial dysfunction, the failure of the endothelium to produce sufficient nitric oxide, is not only a major driver of hypertension, but also one of the earliest markers of atherosclerosis, the process that leads to heart attacks and strokes. By engaging in regular walking, you're not just lowering your current blood pressure, you're actively reversing one of the root mechanisms behind cardiovascular disease. Think of your arteries like flexible garden hoses. With age, inactivity, and poor metabolic health, these hoses can become stiff and rigid, making it harder for your heart to pump blood. But when you walk daily, you're essentially applying gentle internal pressure that keeps these hoses supple, responsive, and adaptive. Here's a simple protocol to apply. Aim for at least 30 minutes of brisk walking daily, enough to slightly elevate your breathing, but still allow you to speak in full sentences. If you're just starting, even 10-minute bouts spread throughout the day can trigger beneficial shear stress. Walk on varied terrain when possible. Hills, gentle inclines, and natural surfaces create subtle variability that enhances muscular engagement and endothelial stimulation. You may be wondering, is this effect really that powerful at my age? The answer is yes, and perhaps even more so after 60. A 2018 study in the Journal of Applied Physiology found that older adults who engaged in consistent, moderate walking had endothelial function similar to people decades younger. The aging process doesn't shut down your body's responsiveness. It simply demands that you provide the right stimulus. What's happening in your brain when this occurs is equally fascinating. The act of walking engages your prefrontal cortex and motor circuits, while rhythmic bilateral leg movement activates central pattern generators in the spinal cord. This coordinated neurological activity further supports autonomic regulation, indirectly supporting vascular health. In simple terms, your brain and blood vessels are talking to each other every time you take a step. This is not hypothetical science. This is real, actionable physiology that you can engage with every single day. No special equipment required. When we think about heart attacks or strokes, we often imagine clogged arteries or weak hearts. But beneath these events lies a more subtle player, one that neuroscience is beginning to reveal in far greater detail: neurovascular coupling. This is the elegant, aha moment-to-moment communication between your nervous system and your cardiovascular system. And after age 60, strengthening this relationship becomes one of the most powerful ways to lower high blood pressure and prevent heart attacks. At the center of this interaction is your autonomic nervous system /ANS, which controls involuntary functions like heart rate, blood pressure, and vascular tone. The ANS has two primary branches: the sympathetic nervous system, often called fight or flight, which increases heart rate, constricts blood vessels, and elevates blood pressure; the parasympathetic nervous system, or rest and digest, which slows the heart, dilates blood vessels, and promotes relaxation. Many people over 60 live with chronic sympathetic dominance. This isn't surprising. Modern life constantly triggers low-grade stress, financial concerns, sleep disruption, loneliness, even subconscious anxiety about aging itself. Over time, this keeps the body in a hypervigilant state, subtly elevating blood pressure around the clock. Here's where walking plays an unexpectedly powerful role. When you walk, especially outdoors, in a rhythmic, relaxed state, you activate parasympathetic recovery. The steady cadence of your steps creates a kind of biological metronome that allows your heart rate, breathing, and vascular tone to synchronize. This rhythmic movement engages brainstem structures like the nucleus tractus solitarius and vagal pathways that directly reduce sympathetic activity and promote vascular relaxation. A fascinating study published in the Journal of Physiological Sciences in 2017 demonstrated that even light to moderate walking can increase heart rate variability in HRV in older adults. HRV is a sensitive marker of autonomic balance. Higher HRV indicates better parasympathetic activation and lower cardiovascular risk. In fact, low HRV has been associated with increased mortality in cardiovascular patients, making it one of the most powerful biomarkers of heart health. Let's translate this into practical terms. Walking calms your nervous system. A calmer nervous system lowers blood pressure. Lower blood pressure reduces your risk of heart attack. Have you ever noticed how much clearer your thinking feels after a good walk? That's neurovascular coupling in action. The improved blood flow to your brain enhances executive function, emotional regulation, and cognitive performance. Walking helps your brain and your heart breathe together in a synchronized rhythm. Here's a simple protocol to enhance neurovascular coupling. Try mindful walking for 20 to 30 minutes daily. As you walk, bring gentle awareness to your breath. Inhale for 3 to 4 steps. Exhale for 4 to 5 steps. This breathing rhythm stimulates your vagus nerve, further amplifying parasympathetic tone. Walking in nature, or at least in natural light, amplifies these benefits by lowering cortisol levels through visual and light-based signaling to your hypothalamus. And here's something you may not expect. Researchers at Harvard Medical School have observed that even anticipation of walking outdoors can lower stress hormones before the activity begins. The brain prepares for movement, signaling safety and control over one's environment. A deeply ingrained evolutionary adaptation. If this insight is helpful to you and you're finding value in how neuroscience can unlock simple but powerful tools for better health, I invite you to subscribe to this channel. There's so much more science-backed, practical knowledge coming to help you strengthen your body and your mind. The beauty of walking after 60 is that you're not just exercising your muscles, you're rewiring the communication between your brain and your blood vessels, repairing a system that modern life often wears down. By now, you understand how walking activates your endothelium and rebalances your autonomic nervous system. But what if you could take these benefits even further, essentially upgrading your walking practice to drive even greater reductions in blood pressure, improve heart efficiency, and stimulate metabolic resilience? The tool for this is interval walking, a remarkably simple adjustment to your daily walk that creates outsized physiological benefits, particularly after the age of 60. Let's start with the basic idea. When you engage in interval walking, you alternate between periods of brisk walking and slower recovery walking. This oscillation creates a kind of mini stress test for your cardiovascular system, challenging your heart, arteries, and muscles to adapt quickly between higher and lower demands. Over time, this controlled fluctuation improves your heart's ability to pump blood efficiently, enhances vascular elasticity, and trains your nervous system to maintain stable blood pressure across a variety of real-life situations. The science behind this is compelling. A 2013 study from the Journal of Hypertension followed adults aged 60 to 75 who practiced interval walking for 12 weeks. They walked for 30 minutes, alternating 3 minutes of fast walking with 3 minutes of slower walking. The result? Systolic blood pressure dropped by an average of 11 mphe, a reduction comparable to, and in some cases better than, prescription medication. Resting heart rate decreased, indicating improved cardiovascular efficiency. Participants also demonstrated improvements in insulin sensitivity and lipid profiles. Critical factors: in metabolic and vascular health. Why does interval walking work so well, especially after 60? The answer lies in vascular flexibility and baroreceptor sensitivity. As we age, the sensors in our arteries, called baroreceptors, which help regulate blood pressure moment to moment, become less responsive. This contributes to greater blood pressure variability, which is itself a predictor of cardiovascular risk. Interval walking acts as a training protocol for these baroreceptors, helping them regain responsiveness by forcing the body to repeatedly adjust to small shifts in workload. Think of it like recalibrating a thermostat. Over time, your body becomes better at maintaining blood pressure equilibrium, even when faced with physical or emotional stressors. From a neurological perspective, these walking intervals also challenge your central command centers in the brainstem and motor cortex, improving coordination between your muscular, cardiovascular, and respiratory systems. Each time you transition from fast to slow, your brain recalculates how much oxygen your muscles need, how quickly your heart should beat, and how much your vessels should dilate. This coordination becomes more efficient with practice. Let me offer you a simple, actionable protocol. Begin with your regular walk. After 5 minutes of gentle warm-up, increase your pace to a brisk walk. You should be breathing more deeply, but still able to speak for 3 minutes. Then return to a slower, comfortable pace for 3 minutes. Repeat this cycle 5 times for a total walking session of about 30 to 35 minutes. Over time, as your fitness improves, you can gently increase the brisk pace intervals. A natural question arises. Is this safe for me at my age? In most cases, yes, but always consult your physician if you have pre-existing cardiac or pulmonary conditions. What's important is that interval walking is sub-maximal. You're not sprinting or reaching exhaustion. You're simply alternating intensity within a comfortable range, creating controlled adaptability. The empowering part? Studies show that these adaptations can occur within 6 to 8 weeks of consistent practice. In other words, your arteries, nervous system, and metabolic health are still remarkably plastic after 60, highly capable of positive change with the right input, and perhaps most importantly, this practice trains your body to respond better to real-world stresses. Climbing stairs, emotional upsets, or minor illnesses, all of which can otherwise strain cardiovascular stability as we age. You've now seen how walking activates your cardiovascular system, strengthens neurovascular coupling, and becomes even more effective with interval protocols. But there's another layer of optimization, one that aligns your walking practice with your body's natural biological rhythms, timing your walk with morning sunlight exposure. At first glance, this may sound unrelated to blood pressure and heart attack prevention, but when we look at the neuroscience and physiology, the connections become surprisingly powerful. Let's start with the role of your circadian system, the internal clock that governs nearly every physiological process in your body, including blood pressure regulation, hormonal balance, vascular tone, and even cardiac risk. Normally, blood pressure follows a daily pattern. It rises in the early morning as you prepare for the day, peaks in mid-morning, and declines toward evening and sleep. This healthy rhythm is known as the diurnal blood pressure cycle, but with age, and especially with disrupted circadian signals, this pattern can flatten or become irregular, increasing the risk of hypertension, arrhythmias, and heart attacks. In fact, research from the American Heart Association shows that heart attacks and strokes occur most frequently in the early morning hours, often between 6 a.m. and 10 a.m., largely due to dysregulation of this natural cardiovascular rhythm. Here's where morning walking with sunlight exposure becomes a remarkably potent tool. When you expose your eyes to natural light, especially within the first 30 to 60 minutes after waking, specialized cells in your retina, called intrinsically photosensitive retinal ganglion cells, send signals directly to your brain's master clock, the suprachiasmatic nucleus. SC. This signal powerfully resets your circadian rhythm, stabilizing cortisol release, optimizing melatonin production later in the evening, and most relevant to our topic, regulating vascular tone and autonomic balance throughout the day. A 2018 study in hypertension research found that consistent morning light exposure significantly reduced both systolic and diastolic blood pressure in older adults. When combined with moderate morning exercise like walking, the effect was even more pronounced, essentially training the vascular system to anticipate and handle daily demands more effectively. Here's what's happening. Morning sunlight exposure stabilizes your cortisol awakening response, which helps prevent excessive early morning blood pressure spikes. Walking during this period adds a parasympathetic counterbalance, calming sympathetic arousal, while still allowing you to gently activate your cardiovascular system. Together, they create a coordinated cardiovascular rehearsal that strengthens your heart's ability to handle both daily fluctuations and unexpected stressors. Here's a simple, highly actionable protocol you can follow. Aim to walk outdoors within 30 to 60 minutes of waking. Walk for at least 20 to 30 minutes if possible. Ensure your eyes are exposed to natural sunlight without sunglasses, but never staring directly at the sun. Even on cloudy days, outdoor light is vastly stronger than indoor light for circadian signaling. If weather or schedule makes this difficult, even 10 to 15 minutes of morning light exposure combined with gentle movement can provide meaningful benefits. You may be wondering, can something this simple truly impact heart attack risk? The answer is an unequivocal yes. Researchers at the Journal of Clinical Hypertension have noted that combining morning light exposure with movement can improve chronotherapy, the strategic alignment of lifestyle habits with your body's clock, which has been shown to lower blood pressure medication requirements and reduce cardiovascular events. And from a neurochemical standpoint, morning walks also increase dopamine release, enhancing mood, motivation, and consistency, making it more likely that you'll sustain this habit long term. If you're finding value in how these interconnected systems, light, movement, nervous system, and cardiovascular health all come together, I invite you to subscribe to this channel. My mission here is to keep translating cutting-edge neuroscience into practical, life-extending strategies you can use every single day. What you're building through this morning walking practice is not just a routine, it's a biological foundation for resilient, adaptive cardiovascular health after 60. We've now seen how walking improves endothelial function, rewires neurovascular coupling, optimizes circadian alignment, and enhances heart adaptability. But there's one more silent threat that walking directly combats, and it may be the most dangerous of all: chronic inflammation. By the time most people reach their 60s, their bodies are often simmering in a low-grade, persistent inflammatory state. Scientists refer to this as inflammaging, a chronic activation of the immune system that damages blood vessels, stiffens arteries, promotes plaque buildup, and dramatically elevates the risk of hypertension, heart attacks, and strokes. Inflammation is at the root of nearly every major cardiovascular event. When arteries become inflamed, immune cells like macrophages and T cells infiltrate the arterial wall, creating microscopic wounds. In response, your body attempts to repair this damage by laying down cholesterol and fibrous tissue, gradually forming atherosclerotic plaques. Over time, these plaques can rupture, triggering clot formation, the primary cause of heart attacks and strokes. But here's the empowering truth. Daily walking, even something as simple as consistent, moderate intensity movement, has been shown to powerfully reduce this chronic inflammatory burden. In a landmark 2019 study published in Circulation, researchers followed older adults who engaged in regular, moderate walking. Over 12 months, participants showed significant reductions in CRF protein, CRP, one of the most reliable markers of systemic inflammation, decrease levels of pro-inflammatory cytokines such as interleukin 6, IL-6, and tumor necrosis factor alpha, TNF-AA. Improved endothelial repair mechanisms, indicating less vascular injury over time. Why does walking produce these anti-inflammatory effects? The answer lies in how movement reshapes the immune system itself. When you walk, your contracting muscles release specialized signaling molecules called myokines, one of the most important being IL-6. Interestingly, the same molecule that is often elevated in chronic inflammation. But when IL-6 is released acutely from muscle during physical activity, it behaves differently, acting as an anti-inflammatory agent that helps suppress harmful cytokine activity, reduce oxidative stress, and promote tissue repair. Think of it this way. Chronic passive IL-6 from fat tissue and aging drives inflammation. Acute active IL-6 from muscles during walking fights inflammation. This is part of why researchers are increasingly referring to skeletal muscle as an endocrine organ, a living system that communicates with your brain, immune cells, and cardiovascular tissues to regulate inflammation. Let's translate this into actionable practice. Walk at least 5 days per week, aiming for 30 to 40 minutes per session. Consistency is key. The anti-inflammatory effects build with repeated signaling. If time is short, even 15 to 20 minutes daily still produces meaningful reductions in CRP over time, according to the Journal of the American Geriatric Society. You may be wondering, isn't it too late to reverse inflammation at my age? Absolutely not. One of the most exciting findings from geriatric cardiology research is that immune plasticity, the ability of your immune system to recalibrate, remains surprisingly robust into your 70s, 80s, and beyond when provided the right inputs. Movement is one of the most potent of those inputs. And from a neuroscience perspective, lowering inflammation also protects your brain. Chronic systemic inflammation contributes to neuroinflammation, increasing the risk of cognitive decline and dementia. When you reduce vascular inflammation through walking, you're not just protecting your heart, you're preserving your memory, executive function, and emotional regulation. You are quite literally cooling the invisible fires that fuel both cardiovascular and neurodegenerative disease. The beauty of this tool is in its simplicity. You don't need complex diets, expensive supplements, or advanced therapies. You need movement. As we've explored, daily walking does far more than simply move your muscles. It orchestrates a profound series of adaptations across your cardiovascular, neurological, immune, and hormonal systems. But what if we zoom out even further? What if we consider walking not just as prevention, but as one of the most potent longevity interventions available after 60? This brings us to what I call the longevity loop. At its core, aging is a gradual decline in the body's ability to repair, adapt, and maintain balance, what scientists call homeostasis. The good news is that walking taps into several of the most critical biological pathways that support healthy aging and extend health span. One of the key systems involved is mitochondrial function, the energy-producing engines inside every cell. With age, mitochondrial efficiency declines, leading to lower energy availability, increased oxidative stress, and greater vulnerability to chronic diseases. But here's where walking intervenes. A 2017 study in the Journals of Gerontology found that older adults who engaged in consistent daily walking exhibited higher mitochondrial density and function in both muscle and vascular tissues. Why does this matter for your heart? Because the heart is one of the most mitochondria-rich organs in the body. Every time you walk, you're stimulating your heart muscle to create and maintain these tiny energy factories, improving endurance, recovery, and resilience to stress. But that's only part of the loop. Regular walking also enhances metabolic flexibility, your body's ability to efficiently switch between burning carbohydrates and fats for fuel. As metabolic flexibility improves, you experience more stable blood sugar levels, lower circulating triglycerides, improved lipid profiles, less visceral fat accumulation, a major driver of cardiovascular disease. Researchers from the Mayo Clinic proceedings have even described daily walking as a metabolic reset, capable of reversing aspects of insulin resistance and metabolic syndrome, which are intimately tied to hypertension and heart attack risk. There's also a profound genetic component to walking's longevity effects. Every time you engage in rhythmic, sustained movement, you activate signaling pathways such as AMPK, CAMP-activated protein kinase, and PGC1, a peroxisome proliferator activator receptor gamma coactivator 1-alga. These molecules function like molecular switches that stimulate mitochondrial biogenesis, DNA repair, and cellular cleanup processes known as autophagy. In simple terms, walking tells your cells, stay young, stay adaptable, and the benefits don't stop at the cellular level. From a psychological standpoint, daily walking provides a unique form of mental stability that promotes longevity. Studies from the blue zones, regions where people routinely live past 90 and 100, consistently show that light, daily movement combined with social engagement and outdoor exposure contributes significantly to both lifespan and health span. Here's an empowering protocol to close this loop. Establish a daily walking ritual. Same time, same route, or same environmental cues, such as morning light or after meal walks. Build consistency over intensity. Longevity is built through repetition, not heroic efforts. Whenever possible, incorporate social walking with friends, family, or walking groups to harness the additional mental and emotional benefits tied to connection and community. You may be wondering, can walking truly serve as a longevity drug at this stage of life? The evidence says yes. In fact, studies from the British Journal of Sports Medicine show that even starting a walking routine after age 60 can add 3 to 7 years of life expectancy, independent of diet, weight, or prior fitness level. What's happening in your brain during all of this is equally profound. Regular walking supports neurogenesis, the birth of new brain cells, particularly in the hippocampus, a region critical for memory, emotional regulation, and cognitive function. Simply put, your brain stays younger, more adaptive, and more resilient with every step you take. The longevity loop is not magic, it's biology, activated and reinforced every time you lace up your shoes and move. As we step back and reflect on everything we've explored, one truth becomes abundantly clear. Walking is not just exercise, it's medicine. And for those of us beyond 60, it may be one of the most powerful, scientifically validated tools we have to prevent heart attacks, lower high blood pressure, and extend both our lifespan and health span. We began with a simple, often overlooked fact that even modest, consistent walking profoundly improves endothelial function, keeping our arteries elastic, responsive, and able to regulate blood pressure moment to moment. We then uncovered how walking activates neurovascular coupling, calming the nervous system, lowering chronic sympathetic drive, and training your brain and blood vessels to work in harmony. By introducing interval walking, we saw how alternating speeds transforms a basic walk into a cardiovascular training session, strengthening the baroreceptors that fine-tune your blood pressure regulation. We discovered how morning sunlight exposure combined with walking resets your circadian clock, stabilizing daily cardiovascular rhythms, and preparing your body to handle daily fluctuations in demand. Perhaps most critically, we addressed how walking helps reduce chronic inflammation, that silent, persistent fire that erodes cardiovascular health as we age. Through myokine signaling and immune recalibration, daily movement cools the inflammatory processes that underlie plaque formation and arterial damage. And finally, we connected all of these systems into what I've called the longevity loop, where walking stimulates mitochondrial health, genetic repair mechanisms, metabolic flexibility, neurogenesis, and emotional well-being. You're not simply lowering your risk of heart attack, you're actively rewiring your biology toward resilience, adaptability, and vitality. Here's what the research shows and what decades of neuroscience, cardiology, and gerontology now agree upon. It is never too late to begin. Your brain and body remain highly plastic, even after 60. Consistent daily walking, even 20 to 30 minutes a day, can reduce cardiovascular risk by 30 to 50%, depending on intensity, regularity, and individual risk factors. But science alone is not enough. Ultimately, this is about agency. Every morning you step outside, you are making a conscious choice to activate this cascade of protective biology. You are telling your body, we are still in the game. We are still adaptable. We are still moving forward. So I leave you with a simple challenge. Begin tomorrow. Lace up your shoes, step outside within 30 to 60 minutes of waking. Allow the light to reset your clock, the rhythm to calm your nervous system, the intervals to strengthen your heart, and the repetition to cool your inflammation. Invite a friend, build your ritual, and if you found value in this science-backed actionable breakdown, I warmly invite you to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share your experience in the comments. This community exists to empower you with neuroscience-based tools that elevate your mind, body, and life at any age. Because the science is clear and your biology is ready. Every step counts.